Good afternoon, everyone. I, as you can see, went to the thrift store yesterday and I picked up this Lloyds branded cassette player radio. Judging by the design, I'm thinking late 70s, maybe early to mid 80s. Could be. It's very heavy. Does have an internal transformer, although unfortunately I'm lacking the cable for that. It's probably not worth any more than what I paid for it. Take that off right there. The button for the tape counter is broken, which is unfortunate. If you look at the top, you can see you've got your standard tape functions. They've gone to the sleep marking on the function switch as opposed to off. AM, FM, a tone control as opposed to bass and treble, volume here. A microphone, what do we have? Maybe a 4-inch speaker, but it could be smaller than it looks like on the inside. We'll have to have a look. We've got a beat setting, earphones, and a mic and remote setting. The mic and remote is the giveaway that this is probably an older kind of cassette mechanism like the Sanyo I did a while back. In fact, I think this is of a similar era. Lloyds here in Canada was not a terribly upmarket brand, but so this would be a sort of catalog store kind of brand. You'd get this. Consumers Distributing there's a Canadian reference for those who remember. When we lived in the States when I was a kid, I think Bell & Company was an equivalent, at least in the DC kind of Maryland, Virginia area. But yeah, so one of those places where you looked at the catalog, scribbled down what you wanted on a piece of paper, and they brought it down from the warehouse. Big part of childhood for a lot of Canadians. Let's see. Very yellowed back. A battery compartment showing some battery damage. And a piece of tape or something in the bottom, but that could be original cloth in the battery compartment. There were oddities. There's tape holding the battery in place, and you can see that the little tabs have broken off the bottom here. We might be able to do something to fix that. So there would be little tabs that would go in here. There are a number of ways you could try to glue something on to replace something like that. Discoloration in the tape. Wonder if that's original. It looks like it might be. A little bit of felt tape to either put on by somebody or originally, I think maybe original, given it looks like it's well stuck on there, to keep this from rattling, given the raw power that you're going to get out of your 4D cells. Now that's a bit of a problem because that's, as it says right on the back here, 6 volts, and I've got 5-volt power supplies, I've got 12-volt power supplies, I've got 9-volt power supplies, but I don't have a 6-volt power supply, except for the one that I've sort of cobbled into. No, I think that's 9 volts still. Yeah, I don't think I have a 6-volt. Anyway, not easy to find. We've got AC in. It uses a square plug. You can see. Let's see if you can see this, maybe. And the side here is the switch, which disables the battery when the AC plug is in, so you do need something that will fit that. So I'm probably going to go DC in, and I'm going to use this little power supply. This is a buck converter. You put, I don't know, usually put 12 volts in this side, adjust the little pot, and you can adjust. This one is voltage adjustable. This one has I like this one because it's got a pretty big inductor and pretty chunky output capacitor. of 220 microfarads at 35 volts. The input one is lower, but it's at 50 volts. I think this might be rated to up to 40 volts in or 35 volts in, something like that. And it's got a little display for the voltage. This one is accurate. And I've just stuck some speaker wire on it because that was what was on top of the wire bundle pile with a couple of clip-on plugs here. Because I have a sneaking suspicion that this is going to work. So let's look at the battery position here and see if we can figure out. So that's going to be negative there and positive at the bottom. So we'll see if I can get these hooked on and we'll see if it plays. I will be right back with that. Here we go. I don't really dare move around the radio much, but let's put it on radio. I saw something on the level meter. See, so the meter here is working. We don't have any output out of the speaker.
Our sleep experts can help you find the sleep schedules. For a limited time.
Just a messed up.
Gel quilt helps wiggle away moisture and regulate body temperature so you can get deep sleep. Only at Sleep Country.
Okay.
Traveling a breeze and give your belongings first-class treatment. Save 50% on Hayes Milo's 3P. For TSC on February 26th.
So FM is working. It's off a bit. This should be just below 90. Well, unless that's French CBC. Anyway, the level meter works. How about tone? Sorry, that's volume. Tone's also dirty and cutting out a bit. Okay, let's try AM.
Supposed to be a minute ago, but anyone coming up with serious injury.
It's quite possible that this power supply is interfering with AM.
Young kid, and just resonated with me and stuck with me. And again, that was the guy who's every year. Ferrari that
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of noise, so I think my little power supply is interfering with AM. But the level meter doesn't seem to work on AM.
been here year after year.
But we could be also having band switch problems. I'm thinking we might be having trouble with the band switch.
Le Havre. Exclusive to our group is the Battle of Normandy Canadian Sector Tour with a stop at Juno Beach.
Your ship,
Yeah.
Amadeus Diamond.
So now we've got the level meter working in AM.
Hamilton's funny 8:20 a.m.
Right.
Here's Hannibal Buress.
820, yeah, so it's a little,
So I do shows
it's a little low.
sometimes, and when I do a college show, I do an interview and a result appeal. I want to share with y'all this article, my gig I did.
Okay, so I've now got it on tape, and I'm going to pause and I'll go down. Well, let's check and see what we've got here. Eject. Okay, fast forward and rewind are working. Play is turning. I think it might be working. So let me go find a tape and I'll be right back. I've had to deal with copyright issues with Fly-By-Night, so we'll use Holst the Planets. Now, these tapes are in not very good shape. I just noticed something. The tape counter is working. It's moved around since I tried it. Now, one thing this will do is this will certainly show you any glow and flutter that might be present. And of course, the tape's been damaged by sitting around in cars for years. But you know what? It's not bad. Tape counter's working. Fast forward slow, but that may be because this tape mechanism is a bit trashed. I think it's in alignment. Pause works. So, where are we with this now? The tape deck works. It does not appear to require new belts. The radio works. The battery door needs some love to figure out how to fix this, or new tape. The whole thing could use a clean. The tone and volume pots need to be cleaned out, and the antenna is complete, but it's missing the top end. Well, may not be complete, but it's missing the top end. Again, not. And this looks to be a pretty standard one. So if one wanted to, could replace that. So what I want to do is I'm going to open this up, and I'll catch some video of that. And I want to clean out these pots, and then I'm going to give the whole thing a quick wipe down with some Windex, but really this does not require any significant repair. You could try to realign the radio, but certainly on FM it seems to be working fine. It's just pushed down a little bit. That's, you know, I don't really feel like fixing it. We'll see if we can get the top end of the dial. As long as we can get, I heard most of the bottom end of the dial. As long as we can get the top end of the dial, it's not really of much issue to me. Recording probably works. So really this is just a question of cleaning out the band switch and the function switch and the tone and volume pots. And, you know, maybe trying to come up with a better solution for that than what was on there. And that's it. So the relatively inexpensive Lloyds, which has a very chunky handle on it, seems to be in nice shape, apart from that stuff. Now, obviously, if you found a power cord for this, which needs the square style, then it would be perfectly useful. But I want to see how big the speaker is. I want to get those cleaned out. And I mean, you could also glue something on to fix the tape counter, but who cares? I mean, it does. I assume reset actually does work. Yeah, it does. So it's just a question of it would just be a question of gluing something on there to operate as a button for that. So the mechanism is working. And these usually have a separate small belt that goes up to the take-up spool. So that's obviously there as well. Okay, so let me open it up and we'll have a look inside. And you can see for a moment my totally bodged together way of trying to get some connection onto the battery contacts in there. Really, I think if I was going to use this, it would be as a radio, and I'd probably just get some D-cells for it. It would be the easiest solution. Opening up, this seems straightforward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws. Well, let's get those. That one doesn't feel very nice. Nice hung out. I'm starting to think maybe someone has been in here before. You can see the original back color under this is probably the CSA sticker on it here. What's interesting about this Lloyds, we've got a CSA number on it. So we know it's the Canadian model. We've got French and English. We've got made in Korea. The fact that we've got French and English probably makes it 80s, not 70s. I'm guessing from the yellowing on the back of this that this was stuck in a window, because the bottom is also not too bad. The sides, the front is painted, I believe, so it has to yellow. Okay. So I'm never quite sure why I feel compelled to buy these things when I go to a store. I don't really have any use for it. I mean, it can occupy shelf space, I suppose. But I'm not likely to actually use it for much. I have lots of radios and not very many cassettes left. I was not a mixtape making person. Oh, it's quite a mess inside. Let's see. Okay. There's the battery connections marked plus and minus. Center ones. Sorry, I'm just lining up these screws here for myself so I can keep some idea of which are which. Okay, so I think the two shorter ones are the top screws going into here. So it's that one, and okay. I'll just have to figure it out. Okay, and we can also unplug over here the antenna. So I can have a look at what's here. We've got a transformer. 0509, is that 1979 on that transformer? Day, year, 85. Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure. 09. It's not 69. We've got a fusible resistor in a sleeve. We've got 2 diodes, looks like. We've got transformer. The tape on the back here is original. We have a fair amount of sawdust in this, so shop radio. We've got a 220 microfarad Samsung branded capacitor on here. Looks like the provision for the other two diodes if they put them in over there. Fairly basic power supply. That is a chunky transformer though. And here's the power cord with the switch on the side here. I'll put that aside. So what do we see? We see pretty typical stuff. Here's the belt. Belt looks reasonably nice. A few little things like a little felt pad for the belt to run again. Here's the motor, Shino motor. Shino Electronics Corporation, Korea, that's what that says. Here's the tape counter. And you can see maybe here the little belt that goes off. The speaker is as big as advertised. Fairly chunky magnet on it. I'm just looking for some sort of dates. We've got a chip here. There's the tuning condenser. There's the side going off to a decently long ferrite. There's the band switch. This has to be the output. And we've got two transistors here. So it's not using a chip amplifier for the output. This is probably, that could be the preamp maybe? No, that's got a, this is probably connected with the radio. That might be one of these, mostly a radio on a chip. I don't see, there's some transistors here, but I don't see very many. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4 transistors. So that's got to be a radio on a chip from the 70s. I'm looking for any other dates. That inspection code doesn't have a date code. Yeah, dusty. But apart from that, looks all right. All done on a single circuit board. That's probably, I don't know what that is. But honestly, it's nicely enough made, right? There's no real complaints about this. Interesting that it's got discrete transistors in the output. So I'm actually going to say that 1979 date is probably about right, that this is probably 79 or 80. I think that I'm probably reading that correctly. I don't really, I'm just looking for another date code on anything here. But I don't see it. Okay. So what I want to see is if I can get into these two. Yes, I can. Because I prefer not to take this out if possible. It does look like it's removable, like it'll unclip from, yeah, from the tuning screen, but I prefer not to if I don't have to. And you're not going to be able to see this, but if I look all the way in here, I've got a straight shot to get at the pots. So I could either get at them through here this way, which is probably how I'll do it. I could also do it that way. Fairly complex dial cord in there. And cassette mechanism is, I mean, again, 70s style cassette mechanism. Look at the size of that machined flywheel here, right? So we'll maybe brush this out a little bit with a paintbrush and vacuum up some of the sawdust that's collected in the bottom here, and see if I can get those potentiometers cleaned. This band switch here I will also clean, because is that the band switch or is that the function switch? No, this is the tape. This is what turns the tape motor on. So there is another small sub circuit board that's sitting underneath here that is that has these controls on it. I think I can get into the switches as well. So I'm going to try that. So this switch operates when you hit play, or no, that's the record. You can see as I push the record button, this is the record switch. So that puts the record part of the circuit into play. All right, so let me clean this up, see if I can spray those out a bit. And then I'm not really going to do anything else with this, I don't think, apart from clean it up today. This belt here would be easy to change. Is there a secondary one? I don't think so. I think there's just the one belt. And then it's probably rollers beyond that. No, there is a secondary belt in there. I'm pretty no, there isn't. So this belt would be fairly easy to change. You would just have to unscrew the motor mount here. There are two screws on the side here that you might be able to do. This may also unscrew up here. It looks like the bearings are just oil light bushings or something like that. So bronze bushings of some sort. So that would be, again, what you would expect. So yeah, let's let me get this cleaned up a bit and spray those out and see if we can get it working a little better. So what I've done is I've come in here and the side here and sprayed the volume, and I can feel it getting easier to turn as the solvent works in. This is not this is not got any lubricant in it, so you do want to be careful not to flood it completely and take out any lubricant that might be there. I've been meaning to get some spray with lubricant. I do actually prefer this stuff for a lot of purposes, especially around cassette mechanisms, but that actually feels pretty good. So if you compare it to the tone control feels really tight and awful. Let's see if I can get in there. It's a little harder. I'm gonna have to drip it down the shaft for this one, I think. No, it's not working terribly well. Let's see if I can get in on the side here. So I'm trying to get in here like this. So I can't quite, because there's a metal. There's a metallized plastic piece. Well, this still feels really pretty awful. Well, I'm going to work on that a little bit. Okay, I've worked around those switches a little bit, and I vacuumed it out. That's what I ended up doing. So let's plug in the power supply and see what we've got. All we've got is the power supply having fallen off, I think. Yep.
Merci, gracias, super. Ready to bike along the canals in Amsterdam? Oh yeah, you're ready to your Canada. Save now on all flights.
This is literally just about the worst spot in the house to do this. Tone control is working. All right, let's try AM.
To continue producing.
Something else is at play.
The President of the United States, who is once using the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
You can't miss on Mango, Levi, Steve Madden, and more. While quantities last, this offer won't last long. Let's do something different. We're experts at getting you that sun getaway you didn't think you could score. And with
Guessing as to what those stations are, I actually think the AM dial is in fair alignment.
let's make your dream getaway happen. In store with 6 locations in the GTA, online, or just give us a call.
Now is the time to stream more Maple Leafs down the stretch drive. Centers in front. Matthews score.
We're losing power because my power supply can't keep up with it.
And more with a new Sportsnet Now Premium 6-month pack.
But the level meter's pretty fun. Okay, so let's turn it back to tape. Level meter does work with the tape. Okay, well, I think it's working. So the next thing we need to do with this is to clean the heads on the tape deck. Now let's see if this one has a tape mechanism. Just trying to remember where to stop that is easy to remove. Some of these come out quite easily, and then you can get at the tape head much better. The only problem with them, it's this side that comes out. The only problem, I'm not going to do it with this one, is that the plastic sometimes gets brittle on them. So what I'll do is I'll shut off the power. Right, so I've unplugged the power supply over here, and I will put it on play so I can see the head, and I won't do it all on camera, but I'll just use some isopropyl alcohol to clean off the head. The head won't really be that dirty, but I can see the pinch roller is quite dirty. And I will eventually give it power so that the pinch roller will move around while I'm doing this, but at least at first, I prefer not to. The isopropyl alcohol is the appropriate solvent to use for that purpose, and you just use a Q-tip or whatever. Okay, so I'll do that, and then we'll put it back together, and I'll give it a surface cleaning. And you know, there was nothing wrong with this apart from having sat in someone's basement for, you know, a number of years.
On the pretext of...
So this is Saturday afternoon at the opera.
And they make savage love as the act.
Yep. Not sure what they have on tonight, but that should be 94.1. So you can see it's about 1 megahertz off. AM seems about right. I don't really feel like trying to realign it right now on FM. So
The characters are clearly delineated through their music. We hear
sound
what
quality is
rude
good.
Boris is, or how Sergei is charismatic.
Sounds fun. The
but
level
also
meter is
loud.
fun.
Tell us about Katerina's music.
Well, it has a big expressive range.
So I did figure out what the sleep function is for. I had to think about it a little bit. But that's because this includes on the side a remote option for the tape mechanism. And I think the remote function probably works when it's on sleep. That's my guess. Yeah. Anyway, a surprisingly well made in Korea, Lloyds, we'll say 1979 for want of a better year for it, cassette radio. And as I said, just needed a bit of a cleanup, a bit of a spray of the volume pot mainly in there. Needed the cassette heads cleaned, but the belts are fine. I'm not going to touch them. And the cassette mechanism probably was working about as well as it ever did. So no need to touch the alignment or anything on that. The only thing that could be done additionally would be to realign the FM radio. But I don't really want to do that right now. The AM seems reasonably in alignment. So I'm just going to leave it alone. And that's that. So as I said, I put the cover back on, and I'll maybe take a bit of a video after I've got it cleaned up a little bit more. One thing I will note as I start to put this back together is that it had this little cloth on here that was intended to keep dirt from getting in the vents at the back. It's come off, but I'll put a couple of spots of super glue on to hold it in place. It wasn't entirely successful, but that's a nice idea for something like a shop radio. There's no reason why you couldn't retrofit an existing radio by, putting a little bit of cloth over the vents in the back. Not a bad idea. Okay, so the radio's back together. I haven't tried it, but I'm sure it's working fine. So my usual approach to cleaning something like this is to use Windex. This is actual brand name Windex for once. And a microfiber cloth. You can get these pretty well in the auto supply store, right? Because you just give it a spray and then use that. And the microfiber will get into many crevices. It probably won't get into this grill. But the game here, or my goal here, is not to clean this perfectly. This radio is never going to be perfect. I just want it to be clean enough that I can stick it on a shelf or use it and not feel bad about it. The good thing about Windex is Windex won't take off most of the time. These sort of printed on kinds of information on here, right? So where it's on the tone and volume here, that will usually not come off with Windex. Alcohol, well, it might take the paint off, but it will very likely interfere with those. And then, these sorts of design features, to the extent that design is really an element of this radio, you can get in like that. You can get out the Q-tips if you want to do a really good job on it. But we're trying to make this clean enough that it's something you want to interact with as an object, right? You're not trying to make it perfect, because it's never going to be. This was a shop radio. This was probably bought as a shop radio, let's not try to make it something that it isn't, which is perfect. Because it was never. But it's a totally workable thing. As I was saying earlier, I kind of buy these orphans when I see them. because I kind of feel compelled to, but I don't really have any use for them, and it's not of any significant value, right? I've done nothing to it. Is it worth more than the $8 I paid for it? Not really. Not worth shipping on eBay or anything like that, right? So, I don't know. It's the kind of thing I'll give away to somebody if I think they like it and get a kick out of it. But apart from that, I don't know, rescuing orphans, I suppose. But sounds pretty good, actually. It's got a big speaker in it. I think that amplifier has potential to have some fair amount of power for a portable radio. The tuner seems to be fine. Nothing special about it, but nothing terribly bad about it. Again, you can see where the sun has gotten to the back of the case, but not underneath the tuning knob, which has been protected by the metallized finish. One of the first uses of that sort of metallized finish was the Canon AE1 camera. I don't know where I got this trivia, but I've held on to it because I own a Canon AE1 that was my grandfather's. And my father had one. He replaced, I think, an FA1, or an F, which was a better camera than the AE1, but I think he wanted to get away from match needle, so the AE1 was a program camera, which means that it would control both the shutter speed and the aperture. Whereas a match needle camera, you would set one and then match the needles to usually adjust there would be aperture priority or shutter priority, right? So you would then adjust the other of those two to your satisfaction. So I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with this battery box door. I think probably just going to, it's still got tape all over it. And most of that battery residue is under the tape. I did give the battery compartment a quick spray with contact cleaner, but won't do much. So all you would really need to hold that in place would be just two little bits. They wouldn't even really have to get into there. But I'm gonna see if I've got anything. So I looked around. I don't really have anything that will fit in there. I don't think that's quite the right thickness. So I think what I'll do is leave it alone for now and just put some tape back on it and call it a day with this radio. But I will think I'll get some D batteries for it just for fun. And so there we have, it's really not a terribly interesting looking, but perfectly working, with the exception of that little plug and the fact that I don't have the power cord, but a perfectly working Lloyds, 1979, 80, 81, somewhere in there, but we'll go for 79 since that appears to be what the date code in it said. All right, well, I hope that's been interesting. Another orphan cassette radio rescued, I guess. Have a good afternoon.